I think when it comes to the state of Israel, we have to understand, there's a verse in the good book that says, let us reason together. And so, when it comes to Israel, if you don't agree with the spiritual side of why we support Israel, I'm okay with that. But the bottom line is this: they are our greatest ally in the Middle East. And our president, at least in the first year and a half of his reign, has offended our allies. At least it appears that way to me. And he's appeasing our enemies. We have no greater ally in the Middle East than Israel. Let us also acknowledge that you can't negotiate with terrorists. And what presidents for years have tried to do is get them to solve a problem that is not the result of a mutual relationship. You have a democracy in Israel, and then you have the PLO who represents terrorism. And so our number one responsibility is to stand by our ally. Now, as President of the United States, my goal would be that hopefully at some point they could get along. But our first responsibility must be to the greatest ally that we have in the Middle East, and that's the state of Israel. And I'm very disappointed by what this president is currently doing to all of our allies.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bates. And we'll go to the gentleman in the blue. Yep.
Okay, hope this doesn't turn into a pick on John night, but I have a question for Mr. Hostetler too.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to speak into the microphone a little closer, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Mr. Hostetler, you've talked about trillions of dollars of debt, and I'm trying to grasp some of the significance of some of this. And it seems to me we have a very large incentive bill, which is only partially spent, and we had a very large TARP bill, which some of it, I think, is being paid back, and some of the stuff that's being paid back they want to use for purposes other than what it was designated for. Can you enlighten us any on what the actual situation is, and is there any way to reclaim any of the unspent funds?
I guess I can't really apprise you of that situation. I'm not in Congress. I'm not following that as closely as I possibly should. I can tell you that I would not have supported the TARP bill. I would not have supported the stimulus. I think you mentioned the stimulus bill. Because the TARP bill has set a very dangerous precedent that we have built on with the essential acquisition of General Motors and Chrysler Corporation, where the federal government and a policy from the George Bush administration to now the Barack Obama administration, that there are entities in our economy that are too big to fail. Well, as long as we keep bailing out these entities that are too big to fail, we're going to find out that there's not a country that's too big to fail. And we have come to the point now where we are swimming in $1.6 trillion of annual deficits. And while it's laudable that some banks have paid back and are in the process of paying back that which the future generations of taxpayers, of borrowers, have lent them, it's time that we break this cycle, and we've got to do it as a result of personnel in Washington D.C. Who will say no to this continual expansion of our federal government. There's a lot of discussion about not being the party of no. Well, it's as a result of being the city of yes that we are at $14.5 trillion of accumulated debt. Believe me, I worked there for 12 years. It was not a city of no. But it had better start becoming a city of no. Otherwise, our children will be crushed under the burden of political correctness and compromise.
Mr. Bates, do you want to answer?
Since Marlon's here, well, I was the only candidate a couple of months ago when Moody's reported that the AAA credit rating in the United States was in jeopardy. I was the only candidate that stood up and said, well, we're in real trouble. If we lose that AAA credit rating, the cost of debt is going to skyrocket. And we must put our fiscal house in order. But let me tell you where I think it needs to start. And I realize this is symbolic at best. But I am asking my congressmen and my senators to take a 5% pay cut. Let's send a message to Main Street that we're serious about putting our fiscal house in order. But let's again acknowledge that this skyrocketing debt didn't happen overnight. Let's realize that earmarks peaked in 2006. Now suddenly we've become the party that has seen the light. But again, I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, why weren't we leading like we should have? And had we been leading, maybe we would not have had Barack Obama in the White House. So again, I submit to you, I believe the American people is going to give us another opportunity to lead. But we better do so with courage and conviction. You know what happened to us? It became about the power and not about the principle. We lost our way. I've heard my Congressman Mike Pence say it again and again. We lost our way. We have to remedy that situation. But it's going to happen if we go to Washington, D.C. and be willing to make hard choices. And I think it starts by Congress saying, you know what? We'll put our money where our mouth is. Many of you Social Security recipients had your Social Security frozen. You didn't get a cost of living adjustment this year. You're not going to get it next year. And yet Congress continues to get theirs. I say we send a message to Main Street that we're serious about putting our fiscal house in order.
Ms. Payne?
Yeah, you're right. We have lost our way. And that's the whole point here. You know, and we must accept responsibility for that as well, as citizens. You know, we sent these men and women there with expectations of them bringing some money back to our state. You know, I've traveled our state. It's not very PC, but I told folks eye to eye that, look, I'm not bringing $1 home. I'm asking for your vote. And I'm telling you that I'm not going to bring $1 home. Every dollar that is brought home from the federal government is just another link in the chain that enslaves us. And that's the problem we found ourselves in, and we find ourselves in today. We've become this entitlement society. So I must ask you directly, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? When it becomes personal like that, no, it's, well, he's going to have to give up his thing, and they give up their thing. But no, we can't do that. I believe we need to get back to the constitutional boundaries set up with our federal government. You know, our federal government was not meant to take care of every time we have a little sniffle and we have a little problem. We as a society, as soon as we run into a problem, the first place we look is at our government. We must turn our eyes back on ourselves and within our homes and back within our state. That's what makes us a free people. That's what will make us a prosperous people. So that's why this May 4th is extremely important. Do we continue down the same path as politicians and politics and the same answers as usual? Or do we go back to a path of a government of the people and by the people and for the people and insert we the people back into our government? Get back to the principles and values that has made us a great people and a very prosperous people and free people. May 4th, we have a very important decision to make.
Thank you. We are going to take the rest of the questions in order, and if you still have more questions, you can stand. Sir, you will be next, and then Ms. Warman, and then the lady there. I'll ask you folks just for a moment, though, if you'd sit down for just a minute. Since Marlon Stutzman just arrived, we're going to treat him as if he just got here. And I was texted earlier, and I shared with you, but Marlon just told me backstage that where he was down in Adams County, he was supposed to speak first. They had him speak last. That's the story he gave me. I have clients in Adams County. I know what the deal is. Between there and here, there are 4 McDonald's, 3 Burger Kings, a Wendy's, and a Dairy Queen. And when you're hurrying and you've got to get somewhere, that peanut butter parfait just looks that big. So Marlon, we had 4 questions asked already. So based on those 4 questions, what do you think? Good answer. All right. Now let's do it. Each gentleman had about 2 minutes to just kind of introduce themselves at the start. Again, as Aisha said at the start, he is a